Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Objective Monday edition, where we talk about current events and all things that affect us as human beings from an objectivist perspective. Joining me today, of course, is the great James Valliant, one of my fave co-hosts, prosecutor extraordinaire, and fellow objectivist. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing quite well. What
Good,
a
good.
what an interesting time we live in, huh?
We do live in very interesting times. But before you got into the interesting times, I wanted to just introduce the topic a little bit. Of course, the thing we talked about, I think, a couple of weeks ago is coming to pass. An indictment has been handed down for the former President Trump. He is set to go in front of a judge, I believe, tomorrow, right? Tuesday.
Right.
When I guess the indictment will be read. Apparently, there's 30 some odd criminal charges that he's being charged with. To some folks on the left, this is, of course, a great moment in history, not only because they despise the former President Trump, and this is a got you that they could add to their record of got yous over the past 6 years of, I think, what amounts to a political persecution. But also they claim this shows the world and their constituents that nobody is above the law, including the President of the United States. Now, this is true, but nobody should be above the equal application of the law, which I think is even more true. And Ms. Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, tweeted recently, commenting on the indictment of President Trump, "The grand jury has acted upon the facts and the law," she writes. "No one is above the law, and everyone has a right to a trial to prove innocence." Now, I found that a massive Freudian slip, which you, the star prosecutor,
Yeah.
will be able to clear up for sure. I thought English common law, which was our inheritance, which is an aspect of our multiple rights that we have against an overarching state, is that the state has to prove guilt. We are innocent until proven guilty. There's a presumption of innocence. And this is of course, a great phenomenon of Western civilization that we don't want to lose, but it seems Nancy Pelosi hasn't gotten that memo. So, James, let's unpack this, okay? From the beginning. Tell me it's the big ones, but tell me what the heck is going on.
What the heck is going on? As we noted last time, this matter has been reviewed as the whole theory is that this payment to a former porn star, Stormy Daniels, constituted a violation of federal election laws because they paid her for a non-disclosure agreement to keep her quiet. Now, of course, she violated that non-disclosure agreement. Well, first she denied there was ever an affair, and then she admitted that there was an affair, and so doing, she violated the non-disclosure agreement. Now, there's nothing illegal per se about non-disclosure agreements, and by itself, there would have been no problem in that. The only way they can sort of make it a crime is to say it was a violation of federal election laws, where you have to report donations and expenditures from your campaign. Was this a campaign expenditure? Well, that's open to question because the campaign itself did not pay. And so the theory is an interesting, bizarre one that sort of bootstraps things together. Making false statements is against the law in New York. So what are the false statements in New York? The false statements about whether or not this was a campaign expenditure when it was a payoff to Stormy Daniels. Now, to prove this case, would have to prove, in fact, that this was the reason why he paid it, that he wouldn't have done it to protect his reputation or to protect his wife's feelings or for any other motive, when there seems to me a dozen other motives, and he has done previous non-disclosure agreements even before he was running for president. So on the face of it, most legal experts have dismissed this as a bizarre and unprecedented way of using federal law by a local prosecutor to bootstrap this into a felony. Or if it had just been the local charges, the statute of limitations would have already long since passed.
So what I'm understanding is that they have to link this to some other charges. In other words, he has to have paid someone in order to cover up the commission of a crime, and that's what extends it into the realm of a felony and allows the statute of limitations to be extended that much further. And of course, this is red meat to the Democrats who've been salivating to put this guy in jail since the moment he was elected, folks. Let's not forget They were yelling resistance, which I think is sort of like an insurrection, from the moment he was elected, and were saying impeach him from the moment he was elected.
No, before he was in office, we had high officials in the Justice Department and the FBI planning to get him no matter what. They were going to get Donald Trump on criminal charges. We have the emails. We have the struck page emails from before and shortly after Donald Trump became president back in 2016, 27, where they were hell-bent on getting him no matter what the facts were. Now, as it turns out in that case, the facts were completely fraudulent. It was campaign research from the Hillary Clinton campaign, which they used. Bunch of lies that they could have proven easily from the outset were a bunch of lies. The Steele dossier, which turns out to be a pile of crap, they used immediately to try and get him. So they've been hell-bent to get him. It seems, as a former prosecutor, I saw all kinds of potential charges that they might have investigated against Trump, but they didn't go for any of the ones I thought that showed any kind of promise. They went for what I thought were just the most baseless, groundless accusations that anyone could see were nonsense on the face of it. So there's no question the intent of most Democrats is to use the justice system to get their political enemies no matter what. When you see the joy and the delight and the popping of the champagne corks that were going across the country, it makes it clear that most political Democrats out there have no respect for justice. I can say this with great confidence. Never, ever do we see a Democrat turning on their own. No matter what they're caught in, Hillary Clinton can take classified documents, destroy the evidence, have those classified documents be compromised by foreign sources, and she is ignored. Comey, the FBI director, said at the time, no reasonable prosecutor would file charges. I raised my hand and said, yeah, this one would. Hillary Clinton should have been charged. She destroyed the evidence. She lied under oath before Congress. Now, I don't want to say that because one person gets away with it, the other person should get away with it. No. Or that one person gets unfair treatment, the other person. No, this is not a you did it, but you got away with it. Ha 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 ha. This is an equal justice matter. Democrats are shameless these days. Utterly shameless. I believe that they could get caught, their candidate could get caught videotaped committing a murder and they would defend him. And yet, on the other hand, if a Republican were caught jaywalking, they would demand the death penalty. Now, Republicans are much better than that, but
they might claim that video evidence of murder was actually a social construct in your own mind, and would try to convince you that it wasn't in fact a murder.
But I'm utterly convinced that the Democrats have no sense of justice, no sense of blind justice, no sense of the constitutional order. They would destroy the constitutional order to get their political enemies, and they would just relish the person suffering in jail just because they were someone they disagreed with. We're turning political disagreements into a crime in this country, and that is third world banana republic stuff. That is very disturbing in my view.
And this has started in the academic institutions where wrongthink also lands you in a sort of jail. Well, let's not forget also that Hillary Clinton, I think, committed a similar type of categorical error on her campaign financing records when she classified the procurement of the Steele dossier as a legal fee as well. Now, I think she did receive some sort of fine, some nominal fine, and a slap on the wrist, a little testimony before Congress. But that is about it. She wasn't perp walked, dragged in. This is what they really want: the mugshot, the fingerprints. They want to be able to advertise that mugshot across the entire.
You bring up such a great point. She was caught in that campaign finance violation, which was a clear campaign violation. She was given a little fine. That's the way these campaign violations work. Now, get this. The Federal Election Commission has already reviewed this Stormy Daniels case, and they didn't even do that. They didn't even do the Hillary Clinton little fine. The Justice Department looked into that. They rejected this case. So if the federal government, whose job it is to enforce election laws, has given this a pass, the fact that a local prosecutor has done this is a sort of dangerous precedent that many people have noticed. People across the spectrum, including people like Professor Jonathan Turley and so forth from Georgetown Law. And I absolutely agree with him on this. What we've done now is liberated local prosecutors to turn the local criminal law into a political weapon, just like some banana republic, or just like Stalinist Russia, just like Nazi Germany, just like the worst authoritarian governments out there. Today, we have corrupted what should have been an inviolate system, our legal system. Once upon a time, the pride of the world. Was there corruption? Were there problems? Yes. But we had a criminal justice system that was independent of politics until now. And we have turned a major dangerous corner. I do not like Donald Trump. I have never voted for Donald Trump. I would never vote for Donald Trump. I think he is dangerous. I don't think he's a good man. You look at the facts of this. He's neither a good human being nor a politician who I would ever vote for. On the other hand, it is in those cases where our objectivity has to be paramount. It is those cases where the law's objectivity has to be paramount. There is the title that I chose for today was inspired by the 1960s film and play Man for All Seasons. Perhaps you're familiar with it, Mark. There is a marvelous, marvelous scene where the slimy spy for the government is sort of sneaking out the opinions of Thomas More, the famous English lawyer, his political opinions on things. And John Hurt leaves the room, and Thomas More's whole family comes up to him, approaches him, arrest that man, have him arrested. He's a bad man. He's a dangerous man. He's a spy. Sort of all the things that they say about Trump. And not until he violates the law. And he says, well, it's God's law that he's violating. Well, then God can arrest him, Moore says. But look, he's a dangerous guy. The devil himself should go until he violates the law. Oh, so you'd give the devil the benefit of the law. And then Paul Scofield, playing Thomas More, gives this brilliant speech. Yeah, this country is planted thick with laws from coast to coast. And if you cut a path through the devil, to path through those laws to get to the devil, and when the devil turns around and all the laws have been flattened, do you think you could survive in the winds that would then blow? And Thomas More says, yeah, I give the devil the benefit of the law for my own safety's sake.
Indeed.
As an objectivist, I think we can all sort of just high five it right there, because once we have a partial system, I mean biased system, which shows partiality on political grounds, we have no justice system whatever. The entire principle of equal justice of the law is shattered. This is an objectivist point here. Virtue requires, in effect, perfection. We, of course, believe perfection is possible. But once you enter the realm of compromise on principle, once you say, oh, we're just doing it to get Trump, oh, just give us this one exception, we'll go back to equal protection and non-political prosecution once this is wrong. You've destroyed the principle. You've now one little compromise and you've utterly caved in. You know, the corrupt judge needs to have a reputation for honesty most of the time. If he takes bribes only occasionally, he is a corrupt judge. If a person just tells the truth most of the time to maintain his credibility, but tells only a few whoppers occasionally, he is a liar. If we have a system, once it's done this, the very idea of apolitical blind justice has been destroyed. And time again, Democrats will do that. They will shatter some institution and then turn around and be the victims of the very thing that take the end of the filibuster. They ended the filibuster on judicial nominees. Turns around, the Senate, the Republicans in the Senate use it, and now they no longer have Roe versus Wade, and they have a very conservative Supreme Court because the Democrats got rid of the filibuster. Let me make a prediction right here and now. Democrat politicians will be next up if they let this happen. And they can't see principle, they can't see the long run. And trust me, Mark, it won't be too long before Democrat politicians get singled out for political prosecution by Republican prosecutors.
Well, they were warned by Republicans with respect to the filibuster, and they failed to heed it because it didn't work in the moment for them. Now they're experiencing the long-term repercussions of their own behavior. They're also being warned by Republicans again that this kind of political abuse of the Department of Justice, this kind of political abuse of the legal system is going to return to them. It's going to be used against them. And we, of course, as the American people, are going to be caught in the middle of this feud, this partisan feud that will probably have no end until and unless the pitchforks and the torches come out and we storm the Bastille.
Look at the protesting thing. If it's, BLM protesters, or if you're protesting some stolen election that the Democrats used to constantly say was stolen. Well, of course, that's an understandable protest. And in fact, the protest can get a little heated and violent and destroy more than a protest. Oh, that's okay. But now I think what the Democrats are also trying to do is gin up violence on the Trump side, right? The minute you start going down this path like Trump did, the election was stolen from me. He has, in effect, opened up the possibility of January 6th. Once the Democrats go down this path, they've opened up the possibility of more political prosecutions.
Which a man like Trump is not averse to exploiting. He's already said when he was fearing the indictments a couple of weeks ago, go out and protest. Now, he left it wide open, but given the paranoia that he stoked up in his base, that is a call to arms in a lot of respects, and a cautionary tale for any politician out there. We're in scary times right now, folks. I don't know that we've been in as scary times. I mean, I think this is scarier than the mid 60s, mid to late, say 65 to 68, which is a period of terrible turmoil and unrest and terrorism within the United States of America, and anti-establishment neo-Marxists sort of trying to sow chaos. This is worse than that in a lot of ways, because now it has, those very people who were the activists at that time are the establishment today, and using the same types of I think techniques to destabilize our country in the establishment itself. So it's pretty frightening.
When Ayn Rand was writing her social commentary in the 60s and 70s, she was saying, she was decrying and bemoaning properly the death of principle in politics. But when I look back on it now, 50, 60 years ago, it was Democrats on principle defended free speech, at least to some extent. Republicans were willing to turn on Richard Nixon and say, look, dude, they've caught you in corruption. You've got to go. It was the Republicans who told the Republican president, adios, Mr. Nixon. And that's what got rid of him. It was the Democrats at the time who said, no, free speech is the point here. And we have to swallow that because of the principle of free speech. Compared to 50, 60 years ago, we are completely lost in principle. They're systematically destroying principle after principle after principle upon which this country was based, whether it's freedom of speech or apolitical prosecution, you name it. And rather than think in principle and realize the long-term effect of principle, these people are acting in the short range, destroying principle after principle after principle, which is what this country is all about. And once it becomes a thoroughly, whoever's in power will go after the people who aren't in power, because that's the path we're heading right down. We'll be no different than any other countries in history.
I agree. Our exceptionalism is in our principle, is in our holding to the defense of and protection of individual rights by subordinating men to law, moral law.
And just as it is critical, I mean, with speech you agree with, that doesn't need protection. It's the offensive, controversial speech. It's the stuff we disagree with. And here I would say the same thing in spades. It's not, my disagreements with Trump are huge, enormous. I think he's a bad man, a dangerous man, but that doesn't mean I'm going to cut a path through the law to get to him. The laws are more important than any one case or getting any one man. And so the whole idea of destroying a principle to serve some particular end is the destruction of principle as such, the destruction of America as such, in my view.
Yeah, I find it a little harder to believe that since the Democrats have been Democrats, they actually followed any actual principle. But we'd have to go back close to a couple hundred years, I think, to find that. I think maybe into Jackson's reign, but post that, whatever their principle was, it wasn't liberty. Or it was liberty in name only, to affect something else in the political world. Christopher Schmidt, thank you so much for hanging out with us. $2.99 Canadian. Ashley Shrug for $1.99. Will the prosecutor possibly be punished? Now that's a good question. Can he be held accountable if all of these charges are thrown out, or if they're shown to be baseless? Okay, first of all, can that happen? And I mean, it's change of venue seems like a rational option to me, but maybe not necessarily to the courts. I mean, what happens with this prosecutor if it's found out that these charges get thrown out?
There is such a thing as malicious prosecution. And if the prosecution is found to be, I think there's a really good case for malicious prosecution here. The Bragg, before he got elected, before he investigated any of these cases, said, I'm going to investigate Trump. I'm going to get Trump. Trump is the main reason why y'all should elect me. Whoa. So before you become DA, before you even have control of the investigation powers, one of your goals is to get Trump before you're even elected. Okay. And then when you see that the feds have passed on the prosecution, and then he thought about it, hemmed and hawed and so forth, this is malicious prosecution. And that should result in what? The dismissal of the case right off the bat, a malicious prosecution charge. Now, normally prosecutors are immune from prosecution for simply doing their job, but that presumes that there's no civil rights violation, and it presumes that he is not abusing his discretion, and it assumes that it is not a particularly malicious prosecution as it is in this case. Again, you look at the violent criminals who are just getting off left and right in New York City. I mean, and violent criminals are just the revolving door comes out. You commit an armed robbery, you come out, and 2 days later you're committing another armed robbery or rape or murder or whatever. So he's ignoring New York law when it comes to prosecuting violent crimes and thefts, but he's going to charge 34. The other thing, grand jury investigations are by law secret. They must be secret. The fact that we know any details, like 34 counts, is a crime. It is a crime for whoever told the press how many counts there were and whatever else was going on in the grand jury room. It is a felony to reveal the secret, because we haven't charged anyone yet. An investigation, we don't want to hurt anyone who might be innocent. We don't want to ruin people's reputations. It's only tomorrow that we're going to find out, and should legally be able to find out, what the grand jury's indictment was based on the charges that the grand jury has found true that the prosecutor files. It's only when he files charges in public court do they become publicly known. So I don't know what the full theory of the Bragg has here, and none of us really knows until tomorrow when we see that indictment. And indictments, more than other complaints, will have detailed specifics on what the crime is. But 34 counts, 34, talk about overkill. So on a number of scores, this looks to me like malicious prosecution, clearly politically motivated, clearly disproportionate, clearly a novel theory, and that should result in my view, a civil rights case against the New York District Attorney's Office. In my view, that should result in a dismissal of the case as malicious prosecution. And of course, I'm sorry?
What about disbarment?
Yeah, the New York State Bar should review Bragg's license to practice, period. I absolutely think so. I absolutely think so. This is so wildly out of proportionate, so obviously politically motivated. If it turns out to be based on the facts, turns out to be based on the facts as I think them to be, it is a very weak prosecution. The main witness they have, this corrupt, convicted, lying dirtbag lawyer, has himself said before, this wasn't a campaign expenditure. He said that. And then he gets charged himself, and then he changes his mind, and he's a convicted perjurer, and he's a crooked lawyer, and their whole case depends on him. Now, when I 2 weeks ago said I thought Trump was going to get indicted that week, and it turned out it was this week, it was more than a week ago now, I thought their case had fallen apart. since
Mhm.
we spoke, I heard from this other attorney who said, no, I've got all these other lies that Cohen said, where he said about attorney-client privilege and so forth. Oh, a bunch of stuff. And he pointed out how critically the case relies on this one witness. Can you prove, and let me just ask you in theory, can you prove any criminal case beyond a reasonable doubt if it totally relies on an essential element from someone who's a known, repeated liar, both a convicted perjurer, someone we know is willing to lie under oath, and someone who's lied about this particular case repeatedly? That cannot be proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It is a shoddy, thin evidentiary case on top of it all. But as I say, we won't really know the details till tomorrow. But the fact that we know that there's 34 counts tells me someone has committed a crime. And guess what? We investigate the crime of revealing information to grand juries. No one cares. No one seems to care about the real felony that I know was committed here, revealing the secrets of a grand jury. Now that was a felony.
Yes, as Catherine for 4.99 says, it's cancel culture on steroids. You can really see it when all these actual crimes are taking place, that there seems to be overwhelming proof for that are just flying by the Democrats as if they don't exist, while they are searching and searching with a microscope to get Trump with something. Now, I, like you, have to make that disclaimer. I don't like him. I think he's dangerous. I didn't vote for him, and I will never vote for him. It's crazy that you have to make that disclaimer now or get accused of being in his camp just for standing up for an equal justice system.
It reminds me of Ayn Rand's position on pornography. Ayn Rand was personally repulsed by hardcore pornography, but she went out of her way to say, look, that is why I have to say absolute defense. They can depict any images they want if these are consenting adults. And I don't really like hardcore porn, but guess what? It is free speech, and they have every right to put it out there, says Ayn Rand in the 1970s when the Supreme Court was deciding such a case. She said, community standards? That's a bunch of BS. Free speech means they can make whatever kind of film they want, so long as they're not depicting a murder or child porn, committing a real crime in the process. Whatever consenting adults do, that's fine. And I feel very much like Ayn Rand did about porn here in the criminal justice context. The more I hate Donald Trump, the more I have to gather up my steel and say, no, that makes it all the more important for me to make sure that this isn't a targeted political prosecution, which is what it obviously is on the face of it. And I would ask all of my Democrat friends to look deep in their heart, because I had a number of discussions this weekend on social media with Democrats who were just gleeful. And they would say to me, well, look at all the harm Trump did to the country. And I would just turn around and say, absolutely irrelevant. Absolutely irrelevant. The other side could say the same about your guy. And if we were going to use that as the basis, if you think just because this guy's a bad politician, I disagree with his policies, and that gives you a reason to put him behind bars, then you are risking putting yourself, your friends, and your politicians behind bars. They can't see beyond the immediate short range. They can't think in principle. I would ask my Democrat friends to think carefully in principle about this, and maybe go back to some of the principles they were advocating 50, 60 years ago about equal justice under the law and free speech.
Good luck with that. Catherine, again, $1.99. Looking forward to Mark's reality check today. Oh, that's right. So I'll make an announcement here really quickly. I have a reality check dropping after the Daily Objective on tolerance. That's not something that we as objectivists talk too much about. Many people consider objectivists intolerant folks, and I would say, with respect to our own commitment to integrity, we are quite intolerant of badness, of vice. But I mean it in the sense of the way one projects outward and the way one takes in other people, and in the way that Rand did not like something, would not purchase something, but left it alone for those who would. So I'm going to touch on tolerance in a way that I haven't really heard objectivists talk too much about, but I have my opinion on it. So hopefully it'll be
I won't miss that. I can tell you.
Phil, with 5 pounds, James and Mark, is it just as simple that DT has committed treason against his oath and the people constitutionally? I guess
Violating your oath of office is not a crime for which anyone can go to jail. Violating your oath of office is grounds for impeachment. And they tried twice to impeach Donald Trump and failed to do so. So if someone has violated their oath of office, the remedy is kick them out of office and disqualify them from holding that office in the future. That's called impeachment.
Do
If
you
a
think
person
he
has
committed
not
treason?
committed it, yeah, but violating your oath of office, I've read the federal criminal statutes and state criminal statutes, and nowhere in there does it say violating your oath of office is in itself a crime. A crime is something very specific. In an objectivist world, of course, it would only mean a coercive violation of someone else's rights. But even today, when we have more than that, crimes are very distinct from a violation of your oath of office.
But do you think that Trump committed treason? Because lots of folks on the left, particularly, make that.
There's only one crime defined in the Constitution of the United States, and that is treason. And treason, the original authors of the Constitution and the original body of the Constitution said, treason shall consist of taking arms up against the nation or aiding and abetting physically supporting people who do so. Short of doing violence or planning violence against the United States itself, you cannot commit treason. Let me repeat that. Treason cannot be committed by words. And our founding fathers were really, nor can they be treason because you think he violated his oath of office. As I say, the remedy there is impeachment. Treason in America consists of violence against America. Full stop. So said our founding fathers. Back in merry old England, if you were a political opponent, the parliament could, without benefit of a jury trial, mind you, pass a bill of attainder, say you are now outlawed, put you in prison, take your property, kick you out of the country on a case-by-case basis by a legislative vote because we don't like you and we don't like your politics. Our founding fathers said no bills of attainder, no such shenanigans will be going on in America, and treason is only those who take up arms violently against the United States government. Full stop. So no, Trump, the last American politician who I think committed treason was former Vice President Aaron Burr under Thomas Jefferson. So no, treason is not applicable in this sort of case at all.
He was charged but not convicted.
Not charged but not convicted. But in my view, at least they had a case. He went to Mexico, tried to cause a war against the United States. It's taking up arms. It is actual violence or the planning of violence against the government that alone can be treason.
Yes, agreed. Gail Parker just gives us $5. Thank you, Gail, for your support. Bob Fenton, how can anyone read Clinton cash or conduct, a basic scrutiny of Biden's family financial gift and not find the lack of similar legal indictment outrageous? So I agree there. I mean, but of course that's now called whataboutism when you point out the hypocrisy of the other side.
If it is whataboutism, I disagree. I mean, just because someone got away with it or just because someone did it, and I don't like that. We really should have to approach it case by case and do the right thing each and every time. It is no excuse to say, well, the other guy got away with it, generally speaking, so therefore this guy should get away with it, which is somewhat what the Republicans are arguing. I disagree. But when we can back up and we can see a pattern, several cases adding up to a pattern of unequal justice or certain political party. I mean, the IRS targeted right-wing intellectual and advocacy groups under Obama. Lois Lerner, the director of the IRS, took the Fifth Amendment when asked about this, and it was quite obvious that conservatives were being targeted by the federal tax collectors. Now, when you add that to the fact that Hillary Clinton is destroying evidence in an ongoing FBI investigation, that in itself is a serious crime. That gets yawned and passed. So when you have case after case after case. Now, the Biden family, obviously part of the political motivation here is that, boy, things are really heating up on the Biden thing. It's really looking like Joe Biden himself profited millions upon millions in secret money coming from foreign sources. Okay, now that's becoming more and more apparent just how corrupt the Biden family, crime family really is. We need a distraction, don't we? We need a big fat distraction, and this is part of their political motive in doing so. As I say, I don't want to terribly prejudge the case, but it's sure looking bad for the Biden family, and they do need a distraction. And so normally what I'd say, no, just because some one guy gets away with it doesn't mean the other guy should get away with it. That's just this wrong logic. But if you've established a pattern like we have thus far, between Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, the IRS corruption, you name it, and now the Bidens, that no Democrat would ever think, if it were proven again beyond a reasonable doubt in the media that Joe Biden took tens of millions of dollars from the communist Chinese on the agreement that they get special favoritism, the Democrats would say, "Oh, no, he's a good guy." Democrats have no sense of moral shame when it comes to their own guys, because from what I can tell, they have no sense of moral principle.
Well,
ethics right out the window.
The ends justify the means. So the
Ends
ends
justify
are their
the means.
moral principle. Anything else, everything goes so long as they achieve that end. Tom Hosial says, has gifted Ayn Rand Center UK memberships. Okay, thank you, Tom. Kiana Pellegrino, $2. Thank you, Kiana. But I want you to save up that money. Apollo Zeus for £2. Mark, is that a rash guard you are wearing? Yes, good eye. I'm going to jiu-jitsu right after this, so I'm just dressed up for it. Very good. Wow, so we are in scary, 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 scary times. Political tribes rule the day. It seems like we're going to get political feuds for the next few years, and that's about all we can expect. In addition to out of control spending, the extension of political patronage to more and more constituents to drag more and more people into their various tribes, until we reach that point where that controlled civil war of the mixed economy becomes an outright civil war of neighbors who can't subsist without taking a piece of skin or a piece of flesh off their neighbor's back, and so they're going to fight and fight and fight. I feel like we're heading towards something like that, especially since the Democrats are now openly talking about divorce.
Yeah, open. Ayn Rand again called it. She said, when the government gets the power that it's getting right now, when it ignores the constitutional principles America was founded on, what we will have when the government can hand out favors like this is gang warfare. It'll start with pressure group warfare, and then it'll get to government corruption and bribes. But then she said it will end, this political tribalism will end with outright gang warfare. That is my fear. And now it's no longer we're no longer being ruled by laws, we're being ruled by men, if you know that old saying. And that is the end of objective law. That is the end, as such, of the principle of justice. And it's only a matter of time before it turns around and gets them, as Thomas More warned.
Well, since people I know on both sides of the political spectrum don't seem to have that, especially on the left, don't seem to have that anchor anymore in objective law and the law subordinating men to right, over might. What can we do about this? I mean, because it seems the fix is a philosophical one that ain't going to be around within our lifetime, or maybe 2 or 3 lifetimes from now, unless we can somehow convince a whale, a multi-billionaire a la Trump with the ideals of objectivism to get out there and put his face in front of the cameras and change the world with some great thinking. Short of that, which I think is next to impossible, we have the possibility of this divorce, which I think the left thinks goes favorably in for them, because they have financial institutions and technological institutions that are bound to them. I don't think that would last long with their policies, though. I think they would also take flight in the states that respected rights and taxes and property. And and stuff. What can one do in this? I mean, what can we do in this chaotic period to save ourselves from the horror?
In the long run, as you say, ideas are the only real solution, and that's going to take a while. In the short run, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were heroes on each side who were willing to, turn to people on their own side and say, no, I don't want to get away from me. You're wrong. And that used, like I say, 40, 50, 60 years ago, you actually had some of that. There were actually principled politicians turning on their own. And this is the way they saw it, to protect their own party. If some Democrat got corrupt, they jettisoned him. Some Republican got corrupt, they jettisoned him for the sake of their own parties. But that was assuming that the culture was more principled. So what I would urge the better people out there, and I hope and still believe that there are better minds and politicians out there, stand up against your own people when they are acting irrationally in this regard. I would, and I think there are some better Democrats, let's say, out there who, if they had the courage, if they had the huevos to stand up and say, look, as much as we hate Donald Trump, you're making first of all, you're making a martyr out of him, but you're destroying the justice system that we all depend on. And similarly, I think on the right, we need to have people stand up and say, hey, and there are a few doing this, hey, we've got to oppose this. On the other hand, that's not a valid justification to vote for Trump. You see, these Republicans, this is the other side of it. These Republicans, now that Trump is being politically prosecuted, well, let's vote for Trump. No, that is not a good But how about voting for someone else who regards this as a political prosecution, but doesn't have the nasty ideas that Trump does? Hey, how about that as an option? It is neither a justification for voting for Trump, nor is it a justification for cutting down the laws to get to Trump. And I hope that there are on each side Republicans willing to stand up and say, yes, I'm going to say this is dead wrong, that what they're doing to Trump. On the other hand, it is not a good reason to vote for Trump. And Democrats on the other side saying, no, I hate Donald Trump. He is dangerous, but this is not the right way to do it. And we're destroying something more important in the process. But that requires each side to have principled people on their sides who understand the effect of a moral principle. I think there are a few still left. And so I would beg them, I get on my hands and knees and beg the comparatively rational on each side to stand up for principle. In the meantime, all we can do is stand up for principle, on principle, in the name of principle.
And we are a voice crying in the wilderness, unfortunately, but hopefully you never know where that voice gets picked up and who carries the banner of integrity and principle further along. Right now, it's looking pretty scary. And I agree with you. I don't see anybody on either side who's going to stand up and say what we're saying. And that's too bad. Folks, upcoming shows at 9 p.m. UK time, Ask Me Anything with Harry Binswanger on HBTV. Those are always good. Yeah, don't forget Reality Check drops after the Daily Objective. And make sure you view in all of them if you can, and just to get that algorithm going, and or subscribe.
And we've got a great program for Wednesday scheduled for Peek Off Wednesday. We've got a title. I'm just going to leave everyone with the tantalizing title: Undercover Objectivists.
Ooh, all right. My interest is piqued.
Then it worked.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Well, as usual, James, it's been great talking to you. This is a very controversial topic. It's very interesting, and we'll see during the week what plays out. And once those charges are revealed, exactly how his lawyers are going to deal with them. He's got some pretty slick lawyers on his side. So I can't imagine this going to. I mean, I even saw the lawyer take just before we end. I saw the lawyer play a little bit of sleight of hand when Trump, denied something, was confronted by a left-wing media pundit and said, "Hell, he's just following his NDA." I thought that was a rather brilliant lawyer move. If sleazy, it was still brilliant. There's
one important point we didn't. One last thought I had to just sneak in here.
Yeah,
the judge is considering a gag order on the case. Donald Trump is running for president. Can you imagine a president being told that he cannot discuss the facts of the criminal case he's just been charged with as he's running for president? That by itself is a legal constitutional First Amendment issue that is going to hit the federal courts. And
Wow.
think about the motive behind this prosecution at this time in that respect. Aha, we can tie Donald Trump's lips on the whole matter and put him in jail if he should even violate that gag order. Just had to toss that in.
I don't envy a judge put in the position of having to protect, let's say a jury's knowledge and awareness of the case by, keeping the facts insulated, and that right of him to discuss what will be at the very forefront of his campaign and will be used as a bludgeon against him, what he has a right to defend himself. That is a terrible dilemma for a judge to have to balance. I don't admire the man. Hopefully he's far wiser than I, because I don't know how I would deal with it, to be honest. Well, how would you? Would you say no gag order?
I would say no gag order on Trump because Trump is the defendant in this case. If the Trump, I would put limits on the gag order, let me put it that way, so that he could defend himself during the political campaign. I would also maybe allow the prosecution to say things in response. Prosecutors normally are very restricted on what they can say outside of court. You can't say there's a confession in this case before it comes out in court. That's a violation of rules. So I would loosen it up on both sides, because this is an unprecedented case where it would seem to me that Mr. Bragg, aren't you just doing this to to silence the guy? Aren't you doing it just to get the sympathy so he gets the nomination and a weaker candidate gets see, all these motivations are playing in that seem to me to override, since it is just a nonviolent white collar crime that Trump almost certainly wouldn't go to jail for, however many counts. It seems to me that the free speech issue here overrides whatever alleged harm they think that this crime did.
Yeah, but then there's Trump's penchant for hyperbole and using hyperbole as red meat for his constituency. So it's hard, he lies. He doesn't. It's hard to know what to do in this case, because he will lie to defend himself. And I'm just happy that I don't have to be the one. I think it's a no-win situation. Whatever.
That is a Kobayashi Maru, a no-win right there.
For sure. All right. Well, James, I bid you adieu a second time. It's been great, as usual, doing the show with you. I hope you folks out there in the Daily Objective land got something out of this. If you did, subscribe, like, become a member, and you can become a participant in these very stimulating conversations too. Until then, always remember, check your premises. Peace.